On this episode of the Uplevel Dairy Podcast, we're sharing the story of bold decisions and the next generation of leadership with Mikayla McGee at Jon-De Farms in Baldwin, Wisconsin. With a farm that has roots going back to 1912 and a legacy that has stayed in the family for generations, Mikayla returned to the farm and didn't just follow tradition, she challenged it. At a time when many dairies were looking to expand, Mikayla crunched the numbers and made a bold move to right-size their dairy herd. And she has the data to prove why it was the right call. Mikayla shares what it was like stepping into a leadership role, how she navigated taking on human resources responsibilities, and how they're running today with a Rotary Parlor and a clear vision for the future. That and more to come right here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Compeer Financial. Compeer Financial is a member-owned farm credit cooperative serving and supporting agriculture in rural America. Their dairy team brings world-class expertise and tailored solutions to support dairy producers' financial goals and lending needs. Well, so Mikayla, we're sitting here in the front of the parlor that you guys put up 2 years ago here at Jon-De. And if there's one thing that really stands out, right when I walk through the front door, it's this quote on the wall behind us. And it says, "I am here to see that the love of farm life is still alive in the Dornick family." And so that quote is from your great-grandmother?
Correct. Yep, my great-grandma's journal.
That's what your great-grandmother said. How does that come alive and stay alive for you today?
Well, so yeah, a little background. She was actually talking about the barn fire we had in 1991. And she was referencing the new barn that they were building and how it was so different and how it was kind of unsettling to her. She just didn't know how to feel about it. And she's like, maybe it's because I just don't know. You know, it seems like robots are milking our cows to her at the time. So she was kind of talking about that and how it seemed weird to mourn a barn because it's a structure. But she's like, when something has been part of your life for so long, like it's hard not to. But then she was just talking about the beautiful things that came out of it and the fact that, you know, the love of dairy farming is still in the Dornick family. So, and that they are continuing and aren't just going to, because of a barn fire, quit. So
that was, at that point in time, that would have been early 1990s.
Yep, 91.
91.
Yep.
And when she was looking futuristically at what was being built here at that time, what was being built after that barn fire in 1991?
So that would have been, I may not be the best person to answer this because I was born that year. But it was our original herringbone parlor. So it was a double 10. And then I believe they built the first freestyle barn, which would have housed, I think, 500. Don't quote me on that. So just the whole idea of the units and the, you know, not robots, but to her it was robots milking the cows was very new and strange to her.
And that was coming from a stanchion barn or a tie stall facility,
yep,
into a milking parlor.
Correct.
And in the 1990s, that was kind of a new thing up here in the Northwoods of Northwest Wisconsin.
Yeah, and the freestyle barn too.
And the freestyle barn.
Yep. So it's really cool, and I'm very fortunate that she saved all of her journals and wrote about all those experiences to just, hear what was on her mind and what she was worried about and what was thinking about. It's really cool.
So it gave you a glimpse into what was on her mind and what she was worried about, but it also tells you where her values were.
Right. Yep.
And so for you, you've been back home here for 12 years now.
Mm-hmm.
How does that quote ring true for you?
I think it's just like a very nice reminder to like what it's all about and to focus on the cows and the love of farming and making sure that we are loving it and doing, you know, things we enjoy.
Was it always the plan to come back?
I think so, yes. And there was a short stint where I wanted to be a vet, and then I realized I didn't like school and probably wasn't smart enough to do that. So then I was just focused on dairy science, and I went to the University of River Falls. And then it was always my dad's rule, too, that we had to go work somewhere else. You know, we couldn't just come back home, get some other experiences. And it kind of worked out at the time. My parents were going through a divorce, so it seemed like a good time to go explore other options, just get away for a little bit. And then I ended up coming home a couple years later after college.
So what was your stint in between? What did you do?
I worked at another farm in Emerald. I worked at a farm in Milwaukee for about a year. And then just did some other internships. I was a waitress for a little bit in college. That's something everyone should do.
A farm in Milwaukee?
Yes. Cedarburg, Saukville area. Just the point of working for somebody else and see how other people farm and learning new experiences in that way.
And so then you came back.
Yep.
So describe for me what Jon-De was like when you came back here 12 years ago. What did it look like when you pulled in the driveway then?
Yeah, it was a lot different. I think the farm was naturally and not naturally in an evolution, but we had two herringbone parlors, in the time they built that second one, I think in 2000. Labor was cheap, easy to find. Obviously not the case anymore.
Yeah. And how many employees at that point in
I
time?
think, again, don't quote me on this, but more than we had now, probably like 30 to 35 maybe.
Okay. So 30 employees running two parlors. How many cows were you guys milking at that point?
1550. So more than we are today.
Okay.
Yeah. And it just was the first couple years kind of like, obviously I grew up here, but then trying to kind of find your place when you get back. Where do I fit in? What is my job? Obviously evolved too a lot.
Well, you just hit on, Mikayla, I think is something that is relevant to a lot of other young producers that are coming back to the farm and finding where their fit is.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was that part like for you?
Yeah, it was weird because when I left, obviously I worked here and I had roles and jobs. But then when I came back, it felt like a lot of things had changed, like people and obviously roles. So like that was kind of weird just to figure out. Like it didn't feel like my farm when I first came back. I kind of felt like an outsider a little bit. So that was kind of tricky to navigate, but not necessarily a bad way. Just it was different than when I had left for college.
Where did you start in your own process of finding your path?
So obviously when I came back, my dad had said, hey, there's a position available for you. Do you want to come back home? And like I said, that was the ultimate goal. So I was like, of course, yes. So there was a job for me. And then I just slowly over the years, he gave me more and more responsibility and roles changed a little bit.
So what were some of the responsibilities that you grew into that became part of like your day-to-day over time?
Like HR was a big thing for me, and that was really weird to come back to also because there were people, that I work with that have been here longer than I had, like people I grew up with. We have a couple employees that have been here for 20 years. Being in charge of their job or, you know what I mean, HR and now I don't want to say above them because we really don't have that philosophy here. We're a team, but being the one that does say how much of a raise they're going to get and do an employee evaluation on them, that was weird. I feel good about it now because we've built a relationship, but at the time we didn't have the relationship we had was me being a kid and them working on our farm as an adult. So
that's definitely something to navigate through.
Yeah. So I would say the HR thing was probably the biggest thing.
So that was one of the things that became part of your day-to-day was managing this HR side, also working yourself into that whole system, coming back to the farm you grew up on. But then also, like, what were some of the things that you saw as challenges, or maybe we even reframed them as opportunities for what Jon-De could be that it wasn't at that time?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, like I said, we had two herringbone parlors and just, I don't know, touring other farms. And I'm like, it felt like we had a lot of inputs for really not milking that many cows. I don't want to say 1550 isn't a lot of cows, but it just seemed like a lot of input, a lot of employees for a lot of work for 1550 cows. So it just seemed like we were constantly putting out fires. Just as soon as we ended one shift, we had to start another. And I just felt like we didn't have time to get better. So that kind of, I said, what can we do about that? And so I got pondering ideas. And obviously, money was a little tighter at the time, too, just going through the ups and downs, of the economy and prices as things do. So one thing I was like, what if we downsized and actually didn't run both parlors 24/7 is essentially what we were doing, 8-hour shifts, in two parlors. Like, what if we sold, a little bit to make room for our dry cows? Because they were housed then at our other facility in Baldwin. And I kind of brought it up to my dad and my grandpa. I can't really remember, but I don't think anyone really took it seriously at first, but which it was kind of a weird idea. Like you hear of farms expanding, you don't hear of farms downsizing. And my grandpa, he's an analytical guy. So once we put the numbers to it, and he helped me a lot, like, does it financially make sense to do this? And, we ran the numbers and it's like, no. And I'm like, no, like, I know it does. Like it has to. And we finally kind of figured it out. And like, there is a sweet spot, So like figuring out what that number was is what he helped me with. And we did find that sweet spot. And now we say we didn't downsize, we right-sized. So it gave us time. Things got a lot better, kind of got the wheels turning, and then allowed us to build the Rotary.
And so right sizing for that Rotary means what?
Just with the downsize, we kind of felt that freedom in one of the parlors that what is downtime? Like there's not a lot of farms that had downtime. It's not a popular thing because a lot of the ideas is if you have an investment, you need to be using that investment and getting return on investment. But we had a glimpse of kind of what that downtime felt like and what just that, that lowered our cell count. And we ended up shipping the same amount of milk without missing those cows. We were very close, yes. So it wasn't as big of a hit as we thought it was going to be. And then financially, like I said, we ended up making money instead of, before. We were still in 2 parlors then, and the labor, and like I said, milking, not that many cows in 2 parlors. So just kind of doing the math on what it would look like in a Rotary and how many less people that would be, how much less time that would be, is something we focused on. And obviously once we looked at the numbers, it made sense. It was a no-brainer. We had to do it.
So this whole idea of right sizing, essentially moving out some cows to be able to optimize the facility you had, also position for the future as well, and the efficiencies there. Was that something that you saw somewhere else? How did you come up with that?
I don't really know how it came up. Like I said, I just was frustrated that we never had time to get better. And then I think we might have been having some dry cow issues. We wanted to bring our dry cows home. So we were talking about, do we put up a dry cow barn? And then, I don't know, it just kind of happened. Like, what if we sold one pen and what would that look like? And then we could get rid of, 2 employees and just gave us a little more flexibility. And just, once we figured out the numbers, it made sense.
Initially, what was the reaction when you're like, hey, how about we milk less cows?
I mean, my grandpa is very much, I think he would even like to expand,
Yeah.
He's where my dad has always, one thing my dad has always said is, I want to be the best, whatever size you are, dairy we can be. So at the time it was, I want to be the best 1,500 cow dairy that we can be before, we add on more things. And so that's something through all of this that was kind of in my head too is, and maybe we just had different perspectives on how do we get there. So yeah, grandpa I don't think he loved the idea at first, but he was very helpful in the numbers. I'm not an analytical person, but I kind of had to become one. And so he taught me a lot of like, okay, well, if you want to figure this out, you're going to need to figure out how many people do you think you're going to need? And, what are the shifts going to look like? And so he helped me with a lot of that.
So he really walked through that whole building out the picture of how this would actually work and spent some time with you teaching you how his analytical mind functions.
Yes.
And so you said your dad, his commitment has always been being the best you can be, whether that was at 1,500 cows or even if you would have gone back in time, same thing when you would have been milking 300 cows in that original barn, right? Was he sensing any of the same things that you were with that place that you were at of being maybe a little bit stuck in the day-to-day, being so busy day-to-day that it was getting difficult to be able to like get above it to see the next step to getting better? Was he in that same spot too?
I think so. Yeah. I think we both felt it. And like when you do, the Compeer benchmarking and seeing where you are and what you're spending on labor. And it's just like, we knew we needed to do something. We just didn't know. And like a Rotary was something he had always talked about too. So I think we were very aligned on that. There was never a conversation of robots or any other type of facility. It was always a Rotary.
So explain kind of the day-to-day now of how things go and flow just on the other side of us here in the Rotary.
It's I love the atmosphere that we have now. It's just so much calmer. You know, and when I think back to like just even talking about it and like just thinking like how stressed we always felt and like every day was a new problem and every day was a fire we had to put out. Now it's almost weird. Like I think the first year was actually really odd for everyone because we felt like we were forgetting things or like something was wrong because things are so quiet in a good way. So yeah, I love the atmosphere. We milk our cows in 5 hours. They would have sized us for a 40 stall rotary, but we kind of advocated for a 60 because it's really not a huge price difference when you're talking about the massive amount you're spending for a rotary anyway. That difference is pretty small. So if we do have issues with the parlor, we're not behind for the next shift. We have time. We have time to clean. It's a big area to clean. Just like constantly have time to make those improvements, which is really nice.
And that was what you wanted. That was the goal, was to be able to have the time to do the actions, but also some of it's just being able to think about those things.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. So, and I think our team is a lot more relaxed too. Right now with the Rotary, we don't have just a milking position anymore because it only takes 5 hours. And obviously they want, 8 to 12 hours, a lot of the guys. So right now they feed calves in the morning and then go milk, or other guys will milk and then push cows. So it's just like a really nice to be able to give them and give everyone the schedule they want. So we have some guys that have their families here with kids that want 2 days off. Other guys want 1 day off. We're really flexible with vacation. So it's just nice to be able to offer that to everyone.
You don't feel like you're constantly in that pinch of that. If something goes wrong, everything is behind, the day's screwed up.
Right.
Do you see that from kind of that level of employee burnout? Like, are people fresher when they are not milking for that whole shift and have that 5 hours of milking and some mix of another?
So yeah, I wouldn't want to milk for 8 hours straight. So why would I expect my employees to want to do that and not get burnt out? And so we have a slow spin too on our rotary. We could go faster. Our units are coming off, well before the robot, but I don't want the guys to feel rushed. I mean, I asked input, for the guys. Unfortunately, we knew we were going to have to let a lot of guys go. It was, so we gave everyone a year's notice, kind of a heads up, if you stay, because I didn't want everyone to leave either, being like, oh, I don't have a place here. So if you stay, you kind of get a bonus, But then the guys that stayed kind of helped me create that schedule and like, what would be ideal for you? And then pairing that with what would be ideal for the farm with, feeding calves. And so it was able to not just get rid of milkers, but we eliminated outside jobs then too. So before we had people that just came and fed calves, we don't need to do that anymore.
So that whole right sizing philosophy wasn't just about the cows. It was really about the team also.
Yeah, the team, and I think just focusing on quality over quantity.
Has that been a pretty strong theme for you, quality over quantity?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, like I said, my dad always, said be the best 1,500 cow dairy you can be, and just, why add more to your plate if you're not perfect? I don't want to say perfect. You're never going to be perfect, but if I feel like there's things we can do yet to be better in areas. So until I accomplish those, I'm not going to go out looking for more work.
So speak for a moment about kind of the bells and whistles of the Rotary and what you love about it. What did you include for technology on there to make it easier on employees, to help them enjoy their job more? Because that's been such a focus for you is people around here.
Yeah. To be honest, we did not look at any other rotaries other than De La Val, simply because before we had the 2 herringbone parlors, and we had tried a couple different vendors, and we said whatever we do with the Rotary, we really want to focus on service and parts. And that's why we chose De La Val. And we had already been working with them for our parlor maintenance and knew how they operated and really liked them.
Okay. And how many people do you have around the Rotary?
Yeah, so there's 2 guys. Yep. So one guy is prepping, and the second guy is wiping and attaching the units. And then we have a cow pusher bringing up the pens as well.
So you're running 3 people mainly that are running that milking shift.
Yep.
So you have a beautiful viewing window where people can take a peek, look over the parlor, watch the Rotary go round. But there's something that really stands out about that. And there's the chandelier that hangs from the ceiling, from the peak of the Parlor area. So tell me about the chandelier.
I just wanted, I guess, to put my touch on it. I don't know. I just always had this dream. Like my mom and I have talked about, like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool if you had a Rotary with a chandelier? I wish it was a lot bigger because I got this one from an antique store. And then I went to Vegas and I was like, well, I want a crystal one now. Like that's way bigger. So maybe someday. But yeah, for the ladies,
For the ladies.
for the ladies.
I love that. So, one thing we haven't talked about is this whole concept of really just right sizing
Mhm.
the cows, right sizing the staff, the team to be able to be the best you can be every day. That was something that you had conversations with your dad and your grandfather about to get them on board. But then there's obviously the lending institution that is not used to people that are going to come and say, hey, I want to invest and I'm actually looking to milk less cows. And so when it came to working with Compeer, what was that conversation like?
Well, the downsize was separate. So the downsize actually happened first. So
Okay.
that conversation, yes, was like, I don't know, I guess weird. Yeah, weird to say the least. Numbers don't lie. So we just showed the numbers. Obviously, what we were doing at the time wasn't working great for us. So we knew we had to try something different. And within a year or two, I think we proved that it was the right choice. It was the right size. That kind of, I think, probably gave them the confidence in us for the Rotary. But those numbers those numbers really didn't lie for the Rotary, going from 2 parlors 24 hours a day to, milking everything in 15 hours a day.
And how about the numbers of going from 40 to 60 on the platform? Initially, was that something that, is kind of like, caught maybe like dealers or lenders or whatever off guard?
So we did say, I have zero desire to expand, like I said, until I've tackled everything here, and I don't think we're in the location to expand. But I also want to leave the doors open for the future. I don't know what the future holds. So I think that was my main arguing point for the 60, that and the downtime, like looking at the schedules and what that could do for us. That wasn't too tough of a sale.
So once you really presented the numbers
Mm-hmm.
and looked at, like, this is what's possible in these scenarios, it really wasn't that hard of a sell.
No, the Rotary, just from a labor standpoint, was almost $900,000 in savings a year. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
So we touched on how this move was a lot about people and being able to help manage the schedules for your team here, so they could manage family life and also work life. But tell me a little bit more, because this is an area that you're really passionate about, right?
Mm-hmm.
The people.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's something my dad has always taught me too, is taking care of the people first and, and the cows, but quality, cow comfort, those are some of our values. And like I said, he's always treated all the employees great. And that's something, that he taught my sisters and I too. So yeah, we always want to be an employer of choice is kind of our motto, letting people come to us rather than trying to chase people. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but it is working out.
Yeah. So then how many employees are there as of today?
We still have about 25, including family and part-time. But like I said, we raise all our young stock too, and everyone has that flexible schedule. Like the total hours are down, but the number of people haven't maybe changed as much as we thought they would, but the total hours have.
What else have you brought to that area of human resource management since you came back that you're really proud of?
I guess, I can't take credit for all of it or a lot of it, but just really focusing on treating everyone with respect and how I would want to be treated as an employee, and just making sure, I don't know, life, like I think people get a little caught up in, it's easy to get caught up in the work, and just remembering that everyone has other things going on and they have their own lives. And I know I read something like actually just a year ago that your boss or your coworkers have like equal influence on a person's day as their spouse. So I kind of took that with a lot of responsibility. Like I don't want to be the reason somebody has a bad day, because at the end of the day, it is just work. Like I get it's a lifestyle, but it is a job for a lot of people. And so just making sure that, yeah, it's a fun place to be and a happy place to be, and everyone enjoys what they're doing and feels comfortable and happy.
Is there anything in particular that you just kind of conscientiously cultivated into the HR program or the things that you're doing to show that appreciation and respect?
I think a big thing our farm does, which was not my idea, it was our CFO, Chris, his idea, is the profit sharing. So there's certain members, not all the employees are in it, but some seasoned veterans, you would say, that have been here for a really long time. Those key managers that have been here are part of the profit sharing. So there's a certain percentage, that goes to our pool of profit every year, and that gets divided amongst them. And I think that has been really beneficial, just that hey, the better the farm does, the better we all do.
So as you've incorporated some of those things, have you kind of nailed down what it is that, just drives that extra motivation with your team?
Acknowledging people make mistakes. Stuff's always going to happen. You're never going to be able to get away from that. And how I react to those, I think, is really important. So I try not to get mad. Like, if I am mad, I just walk away and I'm like, okay, I don't want to respond like this right now. And because those things are always going to happen, no matter how great of a team you have. So I think just how I respond to things like that, how we all respond to things like that, is a big thing. And then just like small things, like instead of just having a milker meeting, I cook lunch for everybody. And I try to cook instead of like ordering out. We order out too, but sometimes I try to cook because I feel like it's just a gesture. I don't know, maybe cooking is like my love language, but I just think it's a nice gesture, and it makes our meetings more family style. Kind of just takes, like, even though we have serious things that we need to talk about and address, it just takes the edge off a little bit.
So this is this whole, kind of mindset that you've developed around not just dairy management, but really people management. It's been a game changer, hasn't it?
I think so. And I've obviously have a lot of great mentors. Like I said, my dad's, always been great to people and has instilled that in me. And then my mom obviously does lots of consulting and HR things. So I'm sure I've called her many times. And I've gone to some PDPW, try to educate myself, on it. I think it's evolved to a really strong team. So I have to credit them for a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, you've been working really hard in the last 12 years since you've been back here. The last 12 years got you to where you're at. What do you see for the next 10?
I am in a state of enjoying right now. And just like, obviously we have a 10-year plan with the farm. So the next thing we would want to do is put up a freestyle barn. So that's it, kind of the 1 to 2 year plan. And then that would allow us to bring our pregnant heifers home. Long-term goal, we don't have a timeline on that, would be to eventually get out of our uptown facility, just because we're kind of getting surrounded. We're right across from the elementary school. So, and then just becoming more self-sufficient. This year we took on our own planting. We'd always had a custom grower before, realizing there's more ways to make money than to increase your sales. You can decrease your inputs. So I think that's something that we've focused on more, like I said, just quality over quantity.
Yeah, and that fits right in with what you've been talking about this whole time is looking at what are those opportunities, and knowing, as you said, you're not looking to necessarily do a big expansion, but really just keep on honing in, getting better every day, and be more self-sufficient from this site right here. And so, all right, so Mikayla, as we wrap up our conversation today, I always like to ask people 5 questions.
Okay.
And so the first question I have for you, these are short answer, is in 3 words, how do you want to show up each day?
I know. I read this one and I could only think of 2. The third one I think is a flex word, depending on the day. But especially now that I have 2 little kids, being present. So when I'm at work, I want to be present at work for my employees. And when I'm home, I want to be present for my kids and just be present in life. And the second word was just being kind. I'm not a super religious person, but I just believe in trying to be a good person. I'm not saying I'm good at it. I'm trying, just like knowing the effect you can have on somebody's day. So, the third one's a flex.
If you had a couple to choose from, what would you pick? Or what was on your short list?
I can't remember. I didn't even think of I mean, hardworking. Like, I don't Like I want to have good balance in my life. So like I said, when I'm at work, I'm really at work. When I'm home, I'm really at home. But just trying to balance, I guess, all of that is, something that's on my mind. There's no award for showing up every day, you know what I mean, in life. And I think there's a lot of generations that did focus on that. And it's just like, okay, when I die, like my family is my legacy. So I want to make sure I'm like focused on that and not just work 24/7. So, and I don't mean that to sound like farming isn't my life or a lifestyle, but it is also a job for me too. So just making sure I have that balance and not I say this to myself when I am feeling guilty.
That's a really wise perspective. Question number 2, what does success look like to you?
I guess just enjoying, if I'm making a living and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, I think that is success. And I feel like I'm there. So that's a nice feeling.
That's a great feeling.
Yes.
Okay. And question number 3, what are the words you live by?
Just kind of that same philosophy, though, that I was just talking about.
Yeah.
My husband, he actually is a cancer survivor. So, like, he's such a good, like, not when we were together, he had it before we were together, but so just having his perspective and, like, always having that in the back of my mind is something I think about a lot, too. Just, life's short, man. Just live it.
Sounds like you have some words of wisdom that right in your own aisle, huh? Well, and speaking of wisdom, who are the thought leaders that you follow?
Well, my sister is my best friend. We talk.
And which sister is that?
This is Annalise.
This is Annalise.
Not that Eva, love Eva too. I just, Annalise and I talk an insane amount on the phone. But so usually anytime, I have a problem that need thinking through, her or my husband are my go-tos. But then, like I said, I have so many great resources like in this team that my dad and grandpa have built too, when we were exploring the Rotary, that people we can go to and ask for advice. So just surrounding yourself, I think, with good people.
Yeah. So good internal team and a good peripheral team
Yeah.
here at the dairy too. And okay, question number 5. What's your next up level?
My husband and I are very much in the just wanting to enjoy life stage right now. We have both hustled really hard, I think, the last 10 years. And we also went through 2 adoptions that was really hard on life. Like it was a beautiful experience, but very hard. So now we're just kind of over that hump and over the hump of like getting where we want to with the atmosphere on the farm, that I think we're in enjoying mode. So
yeah, I think it's an up level in itself when you can allow yourself to be in the spot to actually enjoy what you've been working so dang hard for.
Right. Yeah. I think that's where we're at.
Well, Mikayla, this has been so fun to get to sit down with you, get to know you, get to understand the things that you brought back to the dairy here with you, not just in your skill set, but in your ability to see what was going to be necessary for this to be your career path and the path forward here at Jon-De. And is there anything else you'd like to add today?
I don't think so. Thank you.
You just heard from Mikayla McGee with Jon-De Farms in Baldwin, Wisconsin, here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. I'd love to know what you thought of this episode. Shoot me an email to peggy@upleveldairy.com or send me a DM on Instagram or Facebook. And until next time, keep on growing, keep on learning, and up-leveling your dairy. This episode is brought to you by Compeer Financial. Compeer Financial is a member-owned farm credit cooperative serving and supporting agriculture in rural America. Their dairy team brings world-class expertise and tailored solutions to support dairy producers' financial goals and lending needs.